guys, it's PonkyPlays. Welcome to our Raid Shadow Legends video. So today we're gonna be moving on, I guess, on my theoretical buffs videos. If you guys have been enjoying them, I hope you guys have been. I know I've been enjoying doing them. But today we're gonna be doing the Black Knight, who is definitely a champion that needs a buff pretty badly. I know he's gotten at least one buff, and I feel like they missed the mark big time. Like even back when they gave him the buff seemed a little underwhelming, and especially nowadays, it was definitely lacking. Seeing his reviews, they are very low, which I understand. I feel like his A2 is probably the best part of his kit. So let's really quickly go over his kit as it is right now. He attacks an enemy with his A1, has a 75% chance of placing a provoke debuff for one turn, and it's an HP based damage. I know it's a pretty weak hit, but it is good against like the Magma Dragon. He's a good affinity for that as well, and against the head of, I think it's Decay that you can provoke. That's about all. And this is the only skill in his kit that also needs accuracy, so it's kind of unfortunate that you need accuracy to lend this and nothing else. His A2 is a continuous heal buff, a 15% continuous heal, and an increased defense, 60% on all allies for 2 turns, on a 3-turn cooldown, but it does book down to a 2-turn, which is pretty nice. Again, that's the best skill in his kit. He can keep increased defense up the entirety of the, I guess, round on your allies. So that's very nice. And then for his A3, he attacks all enemies. Damage increases according to the amount of HP this champion has lost. It's also an HP based. He has decent HP. His stats are actually not too bad. And I do know that this is rated as like a strong hit, but that's literally all it is. It's a hit, and it's not, crazy damages. I'm assuming it's strong when he's got the least amount of HP, so it requires setup for that as well. It's a very basic skill. The passive is also one of the better parts of his kit. Places an unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn if incoming damage exceeds 15% max HP in 1 attack. So he can at least keep himself alive decently well. It's on a 2-turn cooldown, so every other turn this will trigger. And then, he can start healing himself a little bit with that continuous heal. And because of the unkillable, he's more likely to be able to activate this while being on low HP. But yeah, his kit is just super plain. And the fact that you need accuracy for the provoke, or you can just completely disregard the provoke and build him full resistance so that you don't get, enemies removing the unkillable or getting him controlled or block buffs or anything like that. He does have 50 resistance to start out with, so yeah, again, definitely a very simple kit and somebody that needs a buff. So let's go ahead and go through what I would do if I would, go ahead and give him a buff. So for his A1, I went ahead and said, attacks an enemy, has a 100% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn. This debuff cannot be resisted if the attack is critical, deals 5% more damage for each buff on this champion, and then also the damage multiplier increased. His kit right now reads as, he wants to be a damage dealer, like providing some support, but like kind of those, like support damage hybrids, and right now he's not bringing any damage and not much support either. So being able to get 100% provoke on a single target, and then if he's critting, which if he's, actually able to deal more damage, there's no reason to not build him with crit rate. Being irresistible will definitely help with this skill. And then I figured since he's doing some buffing, being able to deal more damage per buff would be great. I opted not to go with ignoring defense, not that that would be bad on him, but I didn't want him to feel like your main damage dealer. And I mean, honestly, Ignore Defense would still be really good. But I figured, you know, giving him the extra damage for buff would just be a different way to play with him. He's placing at the moment, you know, before my theoretical buff, 3 buffs on himself with the Unkillable, the continuous heals, and the increased defense. So it can stock up. So I figured it could be pretty good. And then again, the damage multiplier definitely needs to be up regardless. So hopefully that'll make him, I mean, the irresistible provoke on an A1, as long as he's critting, will make him that much better in the Magma Dragon and against the Head of Decay. So, and then extra damage is just gonna help everywhere in general. Figure it's a really good buff. For his A2, I went ahead. I had a hard time with this one because, again, it's nice that he's doing those 2 buffs on a 2-turn cooldown, but it still feels very kind of simple. I could give more buffs to him and change it from a 2-turn when booked to a 3-turn, but that feels like it might ruin him in a way. So I figured maybe the best thing to do is just to make it an extra turn skill. So that's what I did. I went ahead and left it as it is and gave him an extra turn. I know there is, as far as I'm aware, there's no champion at the moment that has a extra turn skill and a 2-turn cooldown. But, you know, he could be the first. Either way, regardless of whether he was getting an extra turn or not, he's keeping increased defense and continuous heal buff. Well, the continuous heals are going to be on your allies, but the increased defense is going to stay on them the entirety of the time because he's doing it for 2 turns on a 2-turn cooldown. All he's going to be doing by getting an extra turn is stocking up the continuous heals on your allies. That'll also, you know, immediately trigger it on the extra turn for himself, so he'll get that bit of a heal. That will also, for his passive, immediately make this basically a 1-turn cooldown, which Unkillable on a 1-turn cooldown is good, but I don't think it's OP. Again, he can get that buff removed. He can get block buffs up, which wouldn't place the Unkillable on himself. And there's a decent amount of champions that are ignoring Unkillable at the moment, so I don't think it is too overpowered. I don't know, I feel like the extra turn will just really make this skill and the rest of his kit shine. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think of that, but that was my conclusion on what could be the best way to make this skill still be good, be like, or stay as good as it is, but make it shine in today's raid. And then for the A3, I went ahead and said removes all debuffs from this champion and places a fervor buff on all allies for 2 turns. For those who don't know what the fervor buff does, it increases damage dealt by 10% and then decreases the damage received by 10%. So it'll just help deal that little bit of extra damage and mitigate that little bit of extra damage. Really nice. It gives him one of the newer buffs that they've added, which also gives him more relevancy in the game. But yeah, so I figured Fervor, and it kind of really makes sense with him and his lore. So I figured that would be a really nice addition to that. And then he'll attack all enemies still. Damage increases the same as it is now as this champion's HP decreases. And then I also will also ignore 30% of the target's defense if this champion's current HP is equal to or lower than 50% of their max HP. So if he's triggering this attack when he's lower on HP, then it'll deal extra damage by ignoring some defense. I figure that's a really nice way to revitalize this skill, because right now it is way too simple, especially for a legendary. And I still gave him a damage multiplier increase, because right now, like I said, it's a strong hit, but that's after he, you know, has the max amount of damage he can deal by having the lowest amount of HP. So with the ignore defense that will, and the fervor buff that will increase the damage as well, but it still needs a multiplier increase in my opinion. And then for his passive, I went ahead and added a passive effect. I said increases this champion's resistance by 1 for each 1% HP lost. If current HP is set 50% or lower than max HP, the effect is double. So that still plays on with the fact that he wants his HP to be lower. Just giving him some extra resistance. That way, the lower his HP, the less likely he is to be controlled and manipulated, especially if built well. It'll be, you know, a max of 198 resistance while he's at 1% HP, which is a good chunk to get, but it's not anything crazy either. So I figure that could be pretty nice. And then the active effect is still the same. Places an unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn if the incoming damage exceeds 15% max HP in 1 attack. Again, it's still on the 2-turn cooldown, but because he's going to get an extra turn every other turn, it's basically as though it was on a 1-turn cooldown. And then I went ahead and gave him a second passive. If damage from a skill would exceed 50% of this champion's max HP, instantly activates the Last Breath skill, which is his A3. Will not put it on cooldown. So that'll just go ahead and give him the ability to immediately trigger this skill when he gets a big hit, which will also trigger all of the max effects you can get, so the ignored defense, and because it'll immediately trigger, the A2 will immediately cleanse him and put the fervor buff on all allies. The passive will also be on a 4-turn cooldown. So right now, the Last Breath skill is on a 4-turn cooldown. I decided not to give it a decrease in that, because if he's getting an extra turn, he's basically able to get to that skill super fast. So again, I don't know if doing the extra turn on a 2-turn cooldown might be too much, but I think with the rest of his kit, it works really well. It won't be too crazy because he's not bringing crazy buffs either. Again, increased defense is nice, but there's so much ignore defense nowadays and things that can remove buffs that it's not anything crazy. The continuous heals will be great on allies as well, but they can be removed, so it's not anything crazy, but he'll be able to build them up pretty well. Having a control that cannot be resisted if he's got the crit rate will be great, and then having more damage on his AoE attack and having it being able to instantly activate will just make him even possibly really good in arena as a go second team. But yeah, I feel like that will make his kit really exciting without changing it and making it completely different. But I don't know, what do you guys think of my theoretical buffs? Let me know if you guys would do something different, if you think it's too much or still not enough for him to be relevant. I think he could be really, really fun with those buffs, but again, I made them, so, maybe I'm biased. But that'll be it. Let me know if you guys want to see any specific champion for me to do a theoretical buff on next. If not, my next one will be Staltus, which could be a fun one to do. But that'll be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and until the next video, guys, take care.